Hi, Mr. Kirk. I'm Aaron, and I'm a student here. I want to start off by saying I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to discuss these issues with you, and want to say that though our beliefs differ greatly, I still think it's awesome to be able to converse with you respectfully. For anyone recording me, please put me in an SJW cringe compilation. That's part of my childhood.
Oh, okay, good. I think we can arrange that.
But here's what I want to ask you about. Trans youth experience extremely high suicide rates, and trans youth who transition, receive hormone therapy or surgery have significantly decreased rates of suicide, according to studies by Turbin et al. And Almazan Karoglian et al. In fact, this effect becomes stronger the earlier they receive the surgery or hormone therapy, according to those same studies. Additionally, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders suggests treating gender dysphoria with transition, hormone therapy, or surgery. So I guess just from a purely practical standpoint, regardless of political belief or what you think about trans people, wouldn't it be a good thing to allow access to these surgeries, just sort of empirically?
Sure, let me first ask you a question. Why was there not a trans suicide issue in the 90s?
Are you sure that there wasn't? It's very possible that the publicization and destigmatization of transgenderism now is making it so that people who might have committed suicide before,
So the one thing we can agree on is people need help, right? I think the best way to help somebody that's suffering under a delusion is cognitive-based therapy and non-chemical, non-pharmacological interventions. You would probably agree to be able to have counseling therapy. For example, if a girl's 11 years old and she's experiencing puberty or her father's not around and she might think she's a boy, wouldn't it be more loving to say, hey, let's go through some therapy to actually get you back into alignment with your biological reality, not put you on Lupron or chemical castration or irreversible surgical methods? That would probably be rational, right?
I think that if it were possible to reduce these feelings by, cognitive behavioral therapy and things like that, I would definitely think that would be great. But I guess research also shows that rejecting gender identity in youth typically also increases suicide rate.
So let me ask you another question. Do you think that people that are suffering under the mental delusion of transgenderism might have other underlying mental health issues?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, so it's not fair necessarily to connect transgenderism with suicide. It might be somebody that's suffering under gender dysphoria and also a heavy dose of depression, schizophrenia, anxiety, bipolar disorder, right?
Yeah, I guess, but just empirically, allowing access to trans or gender-affirming surgery does reduce that suicide
Not
rate.
necessarily. So after 6 years, there's a big thing called transition regret. We know 35,000 young people that are now vocally saying they regret medically mutilating themselves. And there is no reverse switch on that. So again, wouldn't it be rational to do what is reversible, which is just cognitive behavioral therapy, not what is irreversible to a 12-year-old that might be going through a temporary puberty-driven crisis? Wouldn't that be a more loving, rational way of going about it? Because what we have now is a boom industry of quote-unquote gender-affirming care clinics and pediatric gender clinics for 12, 13, and 14-year-olds, some of which, by the way, do not require parental consent, of a 13-year-old that might make a mistake. And I think you would agree, you made mistakes when you were 13 years old, right?
Of course, of course.
Yeah, so shouldn't we have a healthcare system and laws that reflect trying to protect the innocence of a 13-year-old, not trying to incentivize their mistakes where they can't reverse that decision later in life?
Yeah, I definitely agree that there are certainly people who do regret these surgeries, and I don't think that's something we should minimize. But at the same time, there are also like hundreds of thousands of people who don't regret these surgeries, and I guess overall.
So then maybe they should wait till they're 18. I think that's the whole crux of this, right? So you got 12, 13, 14, 15, and then I would have a separate moral question on that, right? Even when they're 18. But we're focusing on the pediatric element, right? Which I think is important. And let me just kind of reemphasize this, which I think is the question. Let me actually ask you this. Is there an age that's too young in your opinion? If a 6-year-old says, I think I'm a boy, do you think it might be too young to do surgery on them?
You know, I think it's important for me to admit that I don't really know, but I do think
I appreciate the honesty. So,
I-
but you would probably say 6-year-old, ooh, too much, right?
I honestly wouldn't know. I wouldn't say one or the other, but I would say that, I guess, over 18. How do we say? What do you
Okay, so
think?
let's close every pediatric gender clinic in America and stop the chemical castration of our youth, which is exactly where we were 10 years ago. I think we found a lot of agreement, my friend.
Oh, sorry.
I think we found agreement.
I don't really know either way on that one, but I guess
But
over 18.
the crux of the debate in America today is focused on children. Teenagers make mistakes. Teenagers go through identity crises. Teenagers are susceptible to social contagions. Teenagers are susceptible to peer pressure or for other influences. And the laws and the culture should reflect, let's say, an atmosphere that respects the innocence of the child and says once you are of adulthood, you have certain agency and ability. I might disagree with that, but I don't want to live in a country where an 11-year-old might be misled by a gender psychiatrist, has their breast chopped off, and wants to have that reversed in 8 years. I don't think that is loving. I think that's cruel.
I guess I still raise the issue of, in total, the number of people who are committing suicide would probably be reduced if we allowed these surgeries.
Not necessarily. So in the short term, yes. When you administer testosterone replacement therapy, you get a boost in self-esteem, you get a temporary boost in mental clarity, but that actually tapers after about 5 or 6 years, which is why you see the transitioner community increasing. I could see you're coming after this from a good place, but I want you to think about this in the days and the weeks, and all of you to think, how young is too young? I think that if you are in the teenage age, 12, 13, 14, and we're trying to say that we are so advanced, we're gonna prescribe Lupron, which was called too inhumane for rapists in prison, to young boys that effectively chemically castrate themselves. I think it is a rational moral argument to say, let's make sure we don't do something irreversible to somebody that might be preyed upon. I think that's rather fair and reasonable. Unfortunately, that's considered radical enough where you have Antifa show up.
I get Charlie's point a lot. Me, when it comes to this transgender stuff, I feel if you're above 18 and you want to transition, that's up to you. Because you see some ladies that in their 20s that like they don't want to have kids. So they go and take their hormones, like they make the decision that they don't want to have kids. So whether in future they regret it or not, it's a decision they made in their adulthood. Like they are grown enough, they are matured enough to be able to deal with the consequences of their actions. But when you castrate a 12 years old, 9 years old, 10, 13, I don't know the age, but as long as the person is not up to 18, when you do that to them, at the end of the day, they feel that people around them know better. Like when you're their parents, when they're dressing like a girl, you're with their ladies, they feel that you know better, regardless of your thoughts or not. Most times, we adults still don't know that much. So they just assume you know better. So when they get to the age of like, let me say 20, 23, and they start regretting their actions, most of the time, they don't take blame to themselves. They blame people around. They be like, my doctors, they didn't tell me that I can go for therapy. My parents didn't caution me. So they grow up to not be able to take responsibility. They grow up to not hold themselves accountable for the actions they made because they made those actions at a very tender age. So I feel at that age they should go to therapy and stuff and not go through the self-pity. They are both 18. Because when people have bipolar, when people have schizophrenia, they just don't act the way that generation tells them. When they feel like they are the president, you don't call them president because you know that they are delusional. So when it comes to gender dysphoria, don't castrate people based on the fact that they feel like they're not one body. Because technically speaking, they're not.
But I actually understand the point where you're coming from, Charlie. And this transgender stuff is something that you have to think through. Something you have about to project the future and you as in check in every circumstance that if you transgender yourself, how will it turn out to as in how will it be in future? So it's with checking out the photo in your decision in your life. And speaking about therapy and philosophy, yes, it at least is a way in which can help you be able to lead you through that. This is what you want to face, what you want to face, how to take it out of the condition you have for you to transgender yourself. This thing, what is all about in this topic. If you understand your point of view, at least you know you need to go steps into this step in your life in terms of the so every day is okay because it's all about teaching you that at least as a child, your parents are there for you as the mix of it is shaping your life and also thinking about how before 18 years. So through years, about 18 years, they are recognized already as a citizen and from adults already to make some decision in your life. But at least this transgender is I know see that you can't change from 18 years, but at least the things you want to do in your life, you then advise your people around you, as in people around your friends, so you can be able to give them like this, or this and this are what you're going to be doing. So I really enjoyed the video and I love to watch it.
So guys, that was nice and reaction. Please watch the like, subscribe our channel, and see you next time. Bye.